Welcome to Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. This power couple is building stronger marriages one day at a time. Talking about real issues on love, relationships, and marriage longevity. Let's break down the barriers and engage in healthy conversation with your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie. Take a seat and buckle up because things are about to get real.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Loving Beyond the I Do podcast.
With your hosts, Jason and Tina Marie.
A little bit longer. That's me. All right, so Jason, who do we have in the studio with us today?
Today we have Alicia Davon.
All right, well,
welcome to the show.
Welcome, Alicia.
So great to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Thanks for being with us here today. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. Anything specific you want me to share?
Nope. Whatever you want
Whatever
us to
you
know.
want to share. Whatever you want our audience to know.
Whatever you want things to stay in the closet, we'll keep them in the closet. Today we'll just know whatever you want the audience and us to know.
Well, interestingly, so what I do for a living is I'm a relationship coach along with my husband, Erwan, and a lot of people that enter into this personal growth world and become a coach or maybe a therapist or something had very kind of traumatic upbringings. And I was lucky that I didn't have that. So people are often like, how did you even get into this, get into counseling in the first place, right? Because I had this great upbringing. I have two great parents, a brother, and it was very stable and loving. But there's also an issue that sometimes comes up for people and certainly came up for me. I remember sitting in my college dorm room and kind of feeling like, is this all there is? This kind of mediocre, good enough situation.
Yep.
And that was actually what propelled me into seeking personal growth and development. And so I was training to be a therapist. That's my background. I have a master's in psychology. And I still remember when I was 2/3 of the way through my program, and I was, again, sort of getting a little bit bored. Like I thought therapy was great, but I kind of want something more and I don't know. And I was getting really interested in sexuality and relationships and things like that. And then a friend of mine in my program said to me, you need to meet this guy, Erwan, who is now my husband. She's like, he teaches these classes about relationships. And
so this was in college?
I was at this point in grad school.
Okay. And so he was a professor in grad school.
He wasn't a professor. He was actually had started his own company, his own organization after he finished his schooling. So it was like a private organization teaching singles and couples how to have awesome relationships. And so when I started dating him, I was like, okay, I found my match. And I also found what I want to do with my life. And that was about 20 years ago.
Okay, wonderful. So now tell us a little bit about your relationship, like how long you've been married, how many kids you have, and just the dynamics from the beginning when you first started dating to kind of how it is now.
I like these questions. So Erwan and I have been together for about 20 years. We've been married for, since 2009. So whatever that is, 12 years or 13 years, something like that. And we have one son. He's 5.5.
Oh, wow.
Okay, all right.
Yes. And our relationship is very interesting because it started out, we were dating. My friend had brought me over to his house to meet him, and he was teaching this group, and I thought this was so cool, and I was so impressed, and we were dating. But then when I saw what he was doing for a living, I wanted to get involved in what he was doing. So he and I became business partners, and I was very young. I was in my mid-20s and he was a little older, like his early 30s, and I knew nothing about running an organization or business or anything. I really like to work with people, but so he ended up having to teach me a lot of stuff. So we have had this working together dynamic that we've had to sort of manage throughout the years that now is very smooth and works really well, but it's definitely the most challenging part of our relationship. And then we get to also just be together and be working with couples and with singles in their love lives, which is a total blessing because we're super, super engaged in all of the practices that we train people in. And it's like a huge part of our life. So if only that we need to walk our talk, our relationship is in good shape.
All right.
So I know you seem to be, like you said, you got bored. So you seem to be a very driven person. So, and he seems to be someone who had it together and was driven because he already had that business. So when you said he had to teach you everything, was that beginning part of the relationship because you were dating first and then you decided to get into that business, right? He was like, I want to do what you do. So at that point in time, when you started working with him and he had to teach you everything, that was a point in time where you had to kind of be teachable, right? You couldn't be that lead. I have to kind of, so how did that, whole dynamics work? And what did you have to do in the midst of dating and trying to work together?
The most important thing that I did and that we did together was learning how to separate us as relationship partners and us as business partners, which is difficult, especially when your business is love and relationships, sexuality. So we're kind of living it. A lot of the boundaries are blurred. And so the main thing is I had to get over my thing of like, I don't want to be told what to do.
Right. Okay.
If I was in a normal job, with a boss that was only my boss, I would be a good employee or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was my boyfriend at the time, now my husband. And I'm like, you're not going to tell me what to do. But then at the same time, I'm like, teach me, how do you do this? So it was very crazy making. And, and then he had to learn how to, it's like triggering, right? Relationships are triggering. And so we wanted to work together so much because we love what we do. So we just did everything we can. And the way that we handle it now, this is 20 years later, I've picked up all the skills. I know what I'm doing. I've kind of taken over running everything. We have totally separate roles. So aside from teaching some classes and stuff together, we don't work together that much. Okay, we communicate by email. Like, here's some questions I have. And he's like, here are my answers. And, what do you think? That's it.
And I asked that question because relationships are still sort of the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's a partnership. It's a role we have to grow into and learn. How do we adapt to that? So what is some advice that you would give couples? Because lots of times with our couples that we're coaching, they say, we need to define our roles, right? Because the man has one idea, the woman has another. So when you got into that position, you said, I had to learn how to, pretty much not necessarily being told what to do, but understanding that I need to learn. So I have to be teachable at that moment, right? So what is the advice that you give your couples and couples in general about defining the roles and working through that area, that gray area? Because that's not the love area and that's not the hate area. That's how are we going to make this work?
That's working together, being together all the time area.
Yes. Well, and a lot of couples deal with this, not necessarily with work stuff, but with division of labor at home and with kids and things like that. And there's a lot going on in the culture right now, which is very much about equality and, which is all really good. The root of it is good. So we can kind of get out of these stuck roles, gender roles, right? But it can kind of backfire, and I see in our work, a lot of times with couples, it's very much like, well, I washed the dishes yesterday. Now you wash the dishes today. And like, it has to be equal split down the middle. And, and then it gets into this keeping score, tit for tat kind of thing, which like, even if it's house stuff or kids stuff, you don't really want to do that. You just want to both be able to give 100% and trust that the other person's giving 100%. And, Erwan and I have very different skill sets. Luckily for us, but, he loves cooking. Like he just cooked us lunch an hour ago and it was amazing. I don't mind washing dishes. He does certain things with our son that takes so much stuff off my plate, but I handle like the early mornings and it's just, we go to where we're drawn, and trust is a really big deal. Like you trust that you're on the same team and you give everything, both people.
And that's what we talk to our couples about, gender roles. You don't necessarily need to have gender roles. It's wherever you're stronger at is what you gravitate towards, right? So like you said, he made lunch, you took care of the kid, your child in the morning, he took care in the afternoon. It's just however we work and we get it in to take care of that. So yeah, that's excellent. But like for couples that's out there that's working together or trying to build a business and then still trying to have a relationship. Yes. That's different than being in separate places and then coming home and having a relationship. So can you speak on that some?
Yes. 100% prioritize the relationship. Okay. No one ever, when they were about to die, sorry to be morbid, but they would never thought, oh, I wish I worked more. I wish I made more money. Mm-hmm. Like they think, wow, I really regret not spending more time or not doing the things that I really love. I mean, these are things we all sort of know, but it can really start to play out. And Erwan and I have to check ourselves all the time. I mean, we're so like, hey, what do you think about this idea? What do you think about that idea? And we get in business mode because we love it. But then we're like, okay, let's put that aside for the Monday meeting, whatever. Let's just enjoy ourselves and have pleasure time. So I recommend that when couples work together, you want to just prioritize the romantic relationship, because that is why you're together ultimately. And that can look a lot of ways. It could look like making sure you have enough times scheduled in the calendar for whether it's a date night or sexy time or whatever it is that you like to do together that's you're unplugged from everything else. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure the relationship is in very good shape, and then the work can come second.
So let's take a deeper dive with yours, if you don't mind. We're going to talk about you specifically in your relationship. So what are some of the things that you guys do now that you probably didn't do in the beginning that has added to the overall essence of your relationship? Because when we get into marriage, we don't know what marriage is unless we've been married before. So I'm assuming since you were in your early 20s, you weren't married before. So, and we have this general idea of what marriage is. So what are some of the things that you guys do now that you didn't do then that it really adds to the value of your relationship?
So I'll answer that by giving you a sense of, it's one of the things that we teach our students, but we do it together because it works really well. So it's being deliberate, and I'll lay this out very specifically what we do. So like when we were first together, obviously when you're first together with somebody, it's really easy to have pleasure time together and want to spend time with each other. And you just think the other one can do no wrong. And there's just those issues. You're not deliberate about scheduling and making sure you have time together and making sure that you keep the chemistry alive. So we have these 4 practices and we teach them to our students, but we practice them ourselves. So not all 4 have to be done together, but they can be. And then there's 2 of them that are really good to do together. Okay. So the first one is meditation. Yes. So people have a lot of ideas about what that is, or they're scared of it, or they think it's weird, or they love it, or they've been wanting to get into it. You can really keep it simple by just having a time regularly, ideally daily, where you sit and breathe and focus on your breath and let everything else fall away for a little while. Yep. The second practice is psychological inquiry. So this is a really cool one to do with your partner, which basically is taking turns sharing what your current experience is, like emotionally, maybe what you're thinking about, but even more so what's going on inside of you. Like, wow, I've been having this longing sensation in my heart today, and I feel like, wow, and it doesn't have to be about the relationship. You wouldn't want to sort out relationship problems in this inquiry, but could be more like appreciation of your partner or just what you're feeling yourself. And it's like a time to listen to each other. Again, not to sort out like a fight or something, but exactly. For that, because an inquiry, in our practice anyways, each person gets 10 minutes just to share uninterrupted, and then the person doesn't talk about it afterwards, like reply. So you wouldn't be like, you did all this stuff and you are wrong in your inquiry, and then you can't respond. So it's more about just sharing where you're at,
more positive things.
Yes. Yeah. Or maybe
whatever's concerning you, right?
Exactly. Because we just can become ships passing in the night, and we're not really talking about ourselves. We're talking about
everything else. Right.
Yeah. Third practice is body practice. So this has a really wide range. It's anything that puts you in your body and help you move. It could be exercise if it's not like 2 hours on the treadmill staring at your phone, but maybe more like a nice walk, or maybe you do a little yoga, or maybe you just walk out your front door and go to the lawn and walk on the grass with your bare feet, and, just something to have you feel your body. And then the fourth practice is sensual practice. So some couples are like loathed to schedule or be deliberate about anything sensual or sexual, but we recommend it. Having carved out time, it doesn't mean you need to have intercourse or have some wild sex act or something.
Right.
But, it can if you both want to, but it could also, we have these touching practices that we train couples in, and there can be clothed, they can be more healing touch versus sensual touch, but just a time to like physically connect with each other.
Yes.
That's like sensual, not just giving a massage, even though that's good, but it's more like, let's keep this chemistry rolling. So that is what we do. And we are, if you look at our calendars, those things are in there.
Okay. All right. So
I want to say something. Be intentional. But let me go. Let me say this. Now, you said it could be sensual or not. If I start touching and rubbing, it's pretty much sensual.
Sexual.
Yeah.
You mean sexual?
Okay. Yeah. Sexual. Let me just.
Well, you can kind of get turned on if you're starting to touch.
Right.
Well, that's the nice thing. I mean, if you're both in the mood, go for it. Go for whatever you want to do. But the gradation of the touch practices are nice, because sometimes one or both people, like, they don't necessarily feel, at least at the outset, like getting freaky,
Right.
And so they might avoid contact altogether if they think, okay, well, it has to lead to sex or something. Okay. So you just kind of, communication is a huge part of this, obviously, but it's a good way for couples to start to connect. And then maybe you get more turned on, and then it leads to something sexual. Or if one of the partners is like only up for, some healing touch, they can just say it, this feels so good, and let's keep it to the healing touch tonight. I'm feeling a little like I want that. And it's all in communication.
Right. So it's part of communication. But that's funny that, because touch is like super important if you communicate it the way that you want to.
Yeah, totally. In these days, we're all glued to our devices, and we're all over busy. And, a lot of people are really missing touch, either one or both people in relationship. And then when there's kids involved, it's challenging, because one parent, often the mom, but not always, just feels touched out and is like, I don't want to, at the end of the day, I'm just so tired. I don't want to have to give. So these practices are really nice, because it doesn't require anything in particular from each person.
So besides being intentional, what are some of the things that you learned about relationships that you actually didn't know? Because like I said, one of the things about marriage and what we try to do is to bring the conversation, up front and present, because we didn't learn, I know you said you grew up in a loving family, but was there aspects of marriage that you knew as a child just because you were in a loving home? We don't talk about marriage and, what to do or how it works or the dynamics of it. So what were some of the things that you actually learned that may have been contrary to what the ideal was in your mind of what marriage was?
Well, I again was lucky, because my parents had a pretty smooth relationship. And so I didn't see a lot of conflict. I saw some, but not a lot. And a lot of people just are not that lucky. Or maybe they are lucky because they did see conflict, but their parents also resolved it, and they learned, or who knows, right? Everybody had a different experience growing up. But one thing that was difficult about my upbringing that I learned in my marriage is how to deal with conflict.
Okay.
So I didn't have a lot of it growing up. My parents are pretty mellow, especially my dad. And it's just, so I learned a lot about communication, how to actually say when I'm upset or I don't like something or I'd like something to change. I was very used to just not saying anything and things are good enough. So who cares? But, Erwan and I we're both intense people. We're both passionate people. We've got kind of an intense thing that we're doing with our life. And so a lot of stuff comes up. So how to communicate things, and really that most things are not personal. Like the things that we take so personally are not. And the ways that we get triggered, it like has very little to do with our partner. So taking responsibility for that kind of psychological conditioning that we have, we walk around the world feeling like not taken care of because we had a difficult childhood or our parents weren't there for us in certain ways. And then we kind of walk into the relationship with not rose-colored glasses, but like a template or something. We're seeing the relationship through a certain lens of they don't take care of me. They're not doing it right. So then everything your partner does seems that way. But I've learned, it's more effective to look at the trigger and the feelings that are coming up versus focusing on changing the partner's behavior.
So you said you had to learn how to pretty much disagree or talk about the feelings when you were upset. What brought you to that? Like at what point? Like because you're sitting there in the relationship and you're upset and you don't know how to really express it. You're like, okay, I'm upset, and now what, right? So when you weren't equipped, I'm trying to get the right way to phrase this, right? So how did you move through that, right? How was it apparent that, okay, I don't know how to resolve issues that I'm having and to discuss my feelings? So what were some of the things that helped you to realize that and kind of move through it? Right. Even though I understand communication, but just the development of self-development, not necessarily your partner, but some of the things you had to kind of work through to understand to get to the realization of where you are now.
Yes. So in past relationships, like I'll give you a couple of examples of past relationships I had and how this went versus what I could understand in my current relationship, my marriage. So for example, when I got out of college, I moved up to Berkeley, California, where my best friend lived. I lived with her and had like this amazing couple of years just waitressing and traveling and like doing all sorts of stuff, partying, whatever. And I fell head over heels in love with this guy, James. And he was a waiter at the restaurant where I was a waitress, and we were both servers, I guess how I'm supposed to say it now. And it was like a very passionate 6 months. And then one night in the middle of the night, I was sleeping in his apartment, and then his phone rang. And back then it was an answering machine, right? I don't know what those are. Right. I'm
glad you said that, right? Because our minds are going to a cell phone. Right. So back then it was answering machine.
Right. But the landline rang, the answering machine clicked on, and then there was this really loud talking of some man speaking in French. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Like a wrong number. And James like got out of bed and ran to the message, and he listened to it over again. And then he came in and he said, Alicia, you are not going to believe this, but I got this internship in Belgium that I did not even think I was going to get. I hadn't even heard about it because he didn't think he was going to. He's like, so I'm moving to Belgium tomorrow. He's like, I'm moving like in a month. And I was like, of course, that was so upsetting to me, but I was like, okay, well, he looks really happy and I don't think I'm supposed to be upset. So I'm like, oh, good, great. That's awesome. Great. And I just pretended I was happy for him and like kind of kept that up the whole time. And I was really upset. And then he left and, I wished him up. Oh, I sent him off with this surprise party, tried to be a good sport. And then we sort of stayed together while he was gone for 6 months. And then he came back and I was like really cold. I didn't want to pick him up from the airport. I was doing all these passive aggressive things because there was so much like upset, right? I mean, we can just see in hindsight, if I had communicated, maybe we would have even broken up. You know, maybe it was like, all right, let's end the relationship. And
I love this example. I love this example.
Like, you know, and then I would have been single and gone through grief, but would have been fine. But no, I was tied to this dude that's like in fucking, that's fine. I don't know if I can curse on you.
The thing is that it's good that you can let it out. That's wonderful. I love that. And like you said, in hindsight, it's like, why didn't I just do this, right? Well, that's why I said I love this example. Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. So, but I didn't do any of that. So I ended up with all this resentment, you know. I could have been like single, having a good time. Instead, I was like resentful, passive aggressive. And of course, we broke up, and it was like the weirdest relationship when he got back. And so I won't tell a whole other story of another guy, but let's just say versions of that happened with all of my boyfriends leading up to.
Where you just weren't able to communicate anger.
Right. When she was unhappy.
Something would upset me. I wouldn't say it. And then I'd start acting weird and like withdrawn. And then the guys always responded differently. Like this guy, James, kind of pretended nothing was wrong. Okay. The boyfriend after that, named David, you know, I didn't like something about how he was treating me or, you know, something. And he just got really paranoid and angry. He felt like I was withholding from him. So he would, you know, he was like a maniac, and it was like, okay, I had to break up with him. But with Erwan, I still remember. So inevitably, right, we piss each other off in relationship. And he and I were sitting at this restaurant, and it was sort of dimly lit, and we were having drinks, and I was just sitting there, and I was quiet. And I was mad.
So let's ask, what were you mad at? If you don't mind me asking, do you remember?
I'm trying to remember, right? I gave you the very detailed example with Erwan.
Right.
I don't even know. I mean, he's kind of like, he's a New Yorker, right? He's very like, I'm in LA, like I grew up in LA, and I'm, you know, living in Northern California. We're very beat around the bush.
Yeah, laid back. Yep.
He's like straight shooter, New York, intense dude, right? And about, you know, the beginning of our relationship 15, 20 years ago, he was more rough around the edges. And just in terms of straight communication or something. And I wish I had the example. I don't, but it was something probably around that I felt slighted or like offended because he was too honest with me or something.
You took it too personal. You took it too personal. When you said everything is not really shouldn't be taken personally. Okay.
Right. So I was just sort of bent out of shape about something. I don't know. And I was being sort of quiet and pouty. And Erwan is not a guy to step over any of this. And so he was like, hey, baby, what's up? And I'm like, nothing. You know, it's just that thing.
Well, the inside, you're like, okay.
Oh, yeah. And I was just going to kind of punish him by being pouty and not really saying. And he was like, he just, I will never forget this. He's like, you know, it's okay to tell me that you're mad, right? And I was like,
and what did you think at that point? You were like, what?
That's different.
It was like this funny experience of feeling totally relieved and then totally scared, because I'm like, okay, I don't even know what I've been holding inside because I've been hiding it. What if like I'm a crazy raging person? Okay. Right. Like, is this okay? And he was just so with me, and he was just looking right in my eyes. He's like, tell me, what did I do? What did I do? And he was like, what stupid thing did I do? Just, you know, he was kind of egging me on, trying to be like, tell me how I've been an idiot.
Right.
And so and again, I don't remember, but I was probably like, like 3 days ago, and he said this, and like that was so rude, and like I didn't agree, and blah, and you know, I just started saying all this stuff, and as I started saying it, I could feel my affinity for him growing again, and seeing that he was still there, and he was even smiling, and he was like, you need to tell me these things, baby. I can handle it. I'm rough around the edges. Don't worry. Like, you are not going to offend
hurt me. Right.
So that's how I learned. It was really by experience, and also just knowing this is more conceptual, but often this is its generalization of man-woman relationships, but men often just don't know what's going on exactly. And we as women have desires, or we're mad about something, and like we get upset because we have to spell it out, but we need to spell it out. You just need to clue him in, and then he won't be so clueless and we won't be so pissed.
I was just going to say, so for those women out there who do not know how to express themselves, what do you tell them?
So what I tell them is, so there's 2 ingredients of communicating effectively with men. It's really communicating effectively with anybody, but this particularly works for men. So the 2 ingredients are being direct and simple. Like, say what you want directly and simply. So not like, I want to, go on this really mind-blowing adventure and like be really happy and have a great time. No, I want you to take me to the such and such park, and I want to sit up on the hill, and I want to have a picnic. And so you be direct, but you also got to be loving about it. Some women have trouble being nice, right? Like and I'm not talking sugar and spice, everything nice, like whatever, but we know what we want. We're not afraid to say it, but we might be a little sharp about it or critical. Then some of us as women have trouble saying what we want. Like, we're really nice and we beat around the bush. I was sort of like this, but we never say.
Right.
And both of those, either being too critical or being sharp or being not direct, it just confuses guys. Like, I like to use the analogy, it's like pouring coffee into a computer. Like, they just don't function. Like, men want to make us happy. Like, their goal in life is they want to succeed in making us happy. So if we just know that, it doesn't make it super easy, but it makes it easier to let our guard down a little and like say, this is what I really want, or to be more loving about it versus critical.
Do you have a question? Because I was going to say, from a woman's perspective, right? Let's go to the other end.
Okay, go ahead with the men.
Because we often tell our clients that there's a time to be strong and there's a time to kind of let the man lead, right? So when you said sometimes as women, we can be kind of tongue lashing, kind of critical, and sometimes it's not intentional. It's just kind of the way women communicate. What is something that women can do? And I know what we tell our clients, but what is something, the things that make them more aware of these presents, this lashing, or to be, because like you said, you have to be intentional in your relationship. You have to be intentional in life, period. But what are some of the things that women can kind of understand? This is probably what I'm doing. I'm being a little too harsh. How can I recognize it? And how can I, get a happy medium in the middle where I'm definitely speaking up, but not in that way?
Well, the first place to look would be, as a woman, do I have what I want? Do I have what I want in this relationship? And if the answer is no, then you can say, well, okay, how am I not having that happen? Like, we're very powerful as women. Right. Sometimes we're not willing to take all the responsibility for that, but we're so powerful. And the men in our lives just really want to succeed in making us happy. So if we know that and we're like, okay, I don't really have what I want, it's either because I'm not asking for it or because I am, but I'm gunking up the works with criticism or complaining or something like that. So that would be what to ask yourself. And then also, some women are like, I don't know what I want, right? Right. Maybe I feel like I don't have something I want, but I don't even know what it is. So you might want to journal a little bit. And what are the things I want? Maybe they're things, maybe they're experiences. Maybe I want more attention from the man in my life, or I want more sexual experiences, or I want, this vacation or whatever. Right. Small or experiences or things. I'm not saying you're going to then go to your guy and like demand your list of things.
Right. I would hope not.
No, we can, that's like a stage, right? I mean, a lot of women, we feel kind of powerless, right? Just from growing up in the culture or experiences we've had when we were young. And then when we discover, wow, I really do have a lot of power. I can have what I want. Then we can go a little crazy and be like, give it to me. I deserve it.
I want it all. Yeah.
Right. And that's like, no, I have a funny story about that if you want me to share it in a minute. But so identifying what you want and then seeing if it's because you haven't been being, gracious and friendly about it, or have you not been asking at all, or both, right? Maybe it's both.
Okay.
And then this is a little more kind of ego shattering, but it's great to go to your partner if you're in a relationship and just say, I have things that I want and I've been kind of being a brat about it and I've been complaining and I really want to change that. So you just out yourself, or there's some things that I want and I've been being really shy about it and I haven't even told you.
And now the first one, men are going to be going, what's really going on? What's really, like, if you go,
you look around and be like,
if women confess and they're going to be like, wait a minute, so is this a trick?
Right.
Right.
Like, all right. So we don't have a lot more time. So tell us a story, the funny story real quick. If you can remember. Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I can remember this. So okay. a big theme that we, in our work with singles and couples both, is about women and our power in relationship and the power of the feminine. And, and it's not to the exclusion of men, right? Men are amazing. It's just, having us really get how important our desire is in romantic relationships. So Erwan and I this is my first couple of years teaching with him and also being in relationship with him. And I was having this newfound confidence asking for what I want. So my birthday was coming up and I was like, well, I'm going to ask for what I want and I should get it. And so I email Erwan, and this is like the first clue that I felt like I kind of knew I was being over the top, but I emailed him and I said, for my birthday, I want. And then I had this huge list, like it must have been, 15 items that ranged from like sex when we wake up. And then I want a dozen roses. And then I want to go out to brunch at this place. And then I want you to come home and give me a massage. And then I want you to leave me alone for 2 hours so I can do this. And then I want you, and that I wanted these things is not a big deal. That's actually great. But it was like a demand list with no love at all. It was like, I want. My desires are. And then and I want you to,
what was really this, and I want you to fulfill it.
Yes. Exactly. Like you should fulfill it, right? So I sent him the email and then I started to feel really insecure. I was like, did he get the email? I wonder if he got the email. And he didn't like say anything. Right. He was just like bopping around the house. And I was like, ugh. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe he wants to surprise me. And then my birthday came. So birthday morning, I wake up, expecting to be like lavished with all these things. And Erwan was like not even in bed. He had gotten up early and he was in the other room and he was doing yoga. And I went in there and I'm like all charged up, like embarrassed and scared. And I'm like, hi. And he's like, hi. And I'm like, did you see my email? And he was like, I'm like, where are you? And he's like, I got your email. And I was like, okay, so, and then he just came over to me. He's like, Alicia, I love you. I want to give you everything you want. Your email was crazy. And I think you could just bring a little love into the mix and like, why don't you just kind of chill? And, and I was so embarrassed and I was like crying. I'm like, I thought I'm supposed to get everything I want as a woman all the time. And you're supposed to fulfill my desires. And he's like, Alicia, it's okay, baby. Come on. And he was just not going to fulfill my list like a whipped dog, but he did. Right. But he's like, I know what the essence is of what you want. It's attention and love and to have some great experiences on your birthday, which he gave me, I don't remember what we did, but just did some of those things. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a funny story.
That is funny.
Well, it was because it's not like you like he said, it's not a demand list.
Right.
This is what I would love to experience. I would love to have. And this is things that I, that hopefully I think she was just doing a demand list.
Right. She wanted to make sure. I'm going to test this out.
I have the power.
Right. I'm going to use it.
Let's see if he gives me what I want. Like we're coaching all the men to give what they want, give the woman what they want. Let's see what he's made of. It was very much a test.
And he saw right through it.
I know he did, and he passed.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's a good thing. That was a learning moment. That was a funny story and a learning moment. That is wonderful. All right. So as we wrap up, is there one thing that we usually ask for? I
want to say one thing before we get there. When you say speak up, as far as the woman speaking up, that would help for the men because the men would have some direction as well. It's like, we wouldn't mind giving you what you want, but we want to make sure we're giving you what you want and not guessing, because we'll bring you something and then it's like, I don't want that. I didn't want that. If you guys tell us and give us some general idea, then it's okay. Sometimes we're going to surprise you, but we need that feedback.
Exactly. Yes, indeed.
So I was going to say, is there one big tip that you could give married couples? Because our audience is majority of married couples, and even though we do relationships, or it could just be in relationships, what's one tip that you would give, that gem that you could drop?
Yes. Well, put yourself 100% into it. Don't have a foot out the back door. Just give everything.
All right. So is that in the relationship in marriage, or just in your relationship in general?
In relationships in general, but especially marriage. I mean, commitment is really deciding that you're going to put all of yourself in 100%. And that doesn't mean being your best self all the time or something. It just means that you're 100% committed to giving everything. And so particularly in marriages, yes. And there's places in marriage where sometimes we take our foot off the gas and back away, particularly having that romantic vibe and chemistry as the years go on. And I think that people really want that and would love to keep engaging that over the years.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that.
That's for sure. All right, Alicia, tell us how we can get in contact with the listeners, can get in contact with you and
find out more
about you and what your teachings are.
Sure, absolutely. So for anybody listening that wants to know more about the work that Erwan and I do, I'm offering a free love life consultation. So it's a chat between me and you about whatever you want to share with me in your love life and your marriage and your relationship. And we can go over what your goals and desires are. And if it looks like Erwan and I can support you, then I'll lay out the different ways we work with people. So we have all of our work online. We're based in San Francisco, and we have group classes and private coaching and weekend intensives and all sorts of fun things for both singles and couples. So the way to set up this conversation, there's two ways. The first one is you can text our school at 415-308-9580. That's 415-308-9580. Mm-hmm. Or I'll also give you a link for the show notes. People can just click it and contact us that way.
Excellent.
And you can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Davon Method.
All right.
Davon Method. All right. That's wonderful. Yeah.
All right. Sounds great. So I think that wraps up another episode for us. So as always, we're in it to win it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lovin' Beyond the I Do podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Legendary Relationship, or visit our website at legendaryrelationship.com. Till next time, remember to make every day count.